CCMF has been in existence for about 10 years, so we're like the leading organization in the men's advocacy space in Canada. So we've been able to do things nationally as well as locally that no organization has done.
What should Washington Initiative for Boys and Men aspire to become? The Canadian Centre for Men and Families provides advocacy and programs and services in a way that others in this space could well emulate. Check out our conversation with Kristen Lewis, who's the Executive Director for both the Vancouver, BC and Ottawa branches of the Canadian Centre for Men and Families.
So I've recently rebranded the advocacy work that I do in Washington State from Equality for Boys and Men to Washington Initiative for Boys and Men. And we're looking towards the future. What do we want to try to accomplish in Washington? We're gaining support as far as expanding our network of people who believe that men's and boys' issues are important to talk about, and to see how government can play a role in making improvements for the well-being of males as well as nonprofit organizations. And I think we're gaining political support for establishing a Washington State Commission on Boys and Men. But at this point, I'm still kind of a one-man show in the sense that I'm a guy with a blog and an LLC and a bank account and some dollars that have been donated to support my advocacy. And I'm going to have some meetings coming up with folks who could potentially back what I'm doing in a more robust way and help it grow into a more conventional nonprofit organization with 501c3 tax-deductible status. And so I'm thinking about what kind of things to aspire to, how to try to make the biggest difference. And my perception is that there's some things going on in Canada that are well ahead of what we've got going on in the United States. So with you being in Vancouver and now in Ottawa, really pleased to be able to talk with you. And I want to start by asking if you can orient us to what specifically is offered in Vancouver, the Vancouver branch of the CCMF, Canadian Centre for Men and Families.
Yeah, so I've been the executive director of the Vancouver branch of the Canadian Centre for Men and Families for about a year now. I started it right as soon as I finished my Master's of Law degree. And the CCMF has been in existence for about 10 years, so we're like the leading organization in the men's advocacy space in Canada. So we've been able to do things nationally as well as locally that no organization has done. It has been an uphill battle, and it remains one where we remain on a shoestring compared to analogous women's organizations, but it's worth it. Yeah, it's worth dramatic cuts in expected salary. The sacrifice is worth it, I will say, deeply so, deeply so. Right now, what I'm most excited about in Vancouver is a simple, deceptively simple program. It's called the Men's Peer Support Group Program. So it started with just a couple of meetings a week. It was in person before COVID, and then during COVID moved online. And this month, myself and then our leading men's peer support group volunteer have trained up a whole new cohort of volunteer facilitators. So now we're offering 5 support groups a week online, 5 evenings a week for 2 hours. And it seems deceptively simple, but those support group meetings are places where men from Vancouver and BC, but also from other parts of Canada, just gather to share their stories, to feel like they're not alone, but also to share resources about legal battles that they might be going through. So it's how would I put it? It seems like something as simple as men gathering in a Zoom room in a routine way wouldn't do that much, but that those men remain kind of the base of support for our organization. Because as you know, government funders, not just in the United States, but also in Canada, remain resistant to funding men's organizations, and then private sector donations are hard to rely on. But when you start building a base of membership, and a lot of our men don't have much money, but they come to those meetings, they know what our organization does, and then they support us, we support them, and it kind of creates just a momentum, a feeling of not being alone. It's kind of like grassroots organizing. We ran these meetings over the Christmas holiday when a lot of dads are without their children, when male suicide rates tend to be high, just for a place for men to come, to hear each other, to feel like they're not isolated. So it breaks down the sense of isolation, but it also gives me, because I'll attend those meetings, even if it's just for the beginning of the meeting, to get a sense of what's happening on the ground. So those men become my ears on the ground in terms of policy developments that are problematic, because I might have a sense of the high level legal structure that impacts men, but I don't always know like how an individual we have something called the Office of the Children's Lawyer, or which does child testimony, all of these sort of minutia of the administrative state, how they're actually deploying policy. I wouldn't necessarily know, but those support group meetings become a place for me to just get a sense of what life is like on the ground for men. Yeah, I'm excited about those because even if we're operating on a shoestring, we can still have those meetings. And then the volunteer facilitators exercise leadership and develop their leadership skills. And it's a feeling of men lifting each other up, and people who have been through something hard and gone through enough healing to where they feel like they can support each other, And it's secular, so we're not, a religious organization of any kind, but there's a sense in which those meetings provide a place where men can have a sense of meaning, something that's often destroyed when family gets taken away, and often destroyed by just encounters with the intractable injustice of the legal system. It's a sense of like a place to go where there's a group of people who aren't inherently against men. So I think it's, a healing form of meaning making.
Kristen, what else happens in CCMF Vancouver besides facilitating the men's support groups?
Our organization has two sides. We have our service delivery side, in which that's what the men's peer support group belongs to. We also have a legal clinic, sort of a free place where men can come and ask legal questions of a volunteer lawyer we have, and that works really well. And we have some subsidized counseling that's available through our national office, but also available through Vancouver. So that's the kind of service delivery side. But the whole other part of what CCMF does is commit itself to public advocacy.
I have felt a growing sense of shoulder to shoulderness with other civil rights causes, and an improved empathy in myself for what we might call marginalized groups that experience prejudice. I've come to see how widespread prejudice is among all kinds of groups, and that affects males too. Have you felt a sense of standing shoulder to shoulder with other civil rights causes and kind of see yourself under the broader umbrella of justice, equality, anti-prejudice, equal treatment under the law for all?
I think so. I don't know that other groups necessarily would see us that way. It's unfortunate. I think it's still a hard sell. The Canadian Centre for Men and Families is committed to like humanity in general. So we don't think of men as being special or better than other groups. We just identify that there's cultural and systemic bias against men that isn't well addressed by really any other organization in the country. So we've taken that up as the thing that we address. But we hope that when men's lives are better, that everyone's life is better, because we love women and children and other groups. And we think that having healthy men actually makes everyone's life better. So we're not trying to create this separate republic of men. We just want to remove the barriers to men being able to live healthy, robust, and actually manly lives. Like, we like masculinity at CCMF, think it's important, and see that it's under siege. And when it's under siege, we lose protectors and providers. And then when protectors and providers can't do their jobs, children aren't safe, women aren't safe, communities aren't safe. So I would say committed more to like Canadian society and culture at large than to men, but we do it through the avenue of men.